computer. All right. Okay. So we were talking about weather. What's the weather like there?
So the weather is, um, it doesn't start cooling off nowadays until November, really.
Yeah.
And but we like to start our hawking season in September because we're creatures of habit, of
Right.
course. So inevitably, we're hawking in. We're just, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
We're
No.
just
Yeah.
hiking and sweating, and
Mhm.
thankfully we have Harris hawks, so they don't really give a crap about how hot it is for the most
Right.
part. But we can't really hit it hard and really get them going until it cools off. And when it cools off, you lose wind. And last year we had rain in the Bay Area for like 2 months straight, so
Yeah.
we could not fly. This year it's great. It's like intermittent. It's really great for falconry. It's terrible for construction, which is what I'm doing right now, where we have a little bit of rain, it's dry, and a little bit of rain, it's dry. So nothing really dries out ever, and we can't do anything on the
Yeah.
site.
Yeah.
So, but for falconry, it's been pretty great. Yeah.
So tell me where you are exactly.
I'm in Morgan Hill, California, which is in the South Bay Area,
Is this
San Francisco Bay Area.
okay? So,
And
northern part of the state, central part of the state,
northern,
start of the
central,
northern part.
depends on who you talk to, whether
Yeah.
it's north or central. We like to call ourselves Northern Californians.
Okay.
But where I work and where I fly the Eagle is actually at the SPCA in Monterey, California, which is about an hour south of where I am. And they're on 200 acres here. It's a very well funded and large facility. So I'm able to rehab her at least. There's not a game out here. At least I haven't found any. So, but it's a big enough country where I can feel safe, like letting her go. There's not a lot of power lines. Kind of free reign of the place, which is
Yeah.
great. And it's literally flying 5 minutes from my office door. So
Okay.
can't beat that.
Um. All right. So let's just start at the beginning. Leslie Lamcke. Yeah.
Yes.
And you've been hawking for 13 years.
Yep.
And mostly rabbits with red tails and Harris hawks to begin with, and then
Mostly, yeah. I flew a falcon for a season on pheasant, season or two when I started. When I became a general, I was like, I want to fly a falcon and a hawk.
mm-hmm.
And then you quickly realize that trying to get two birds on two different types of quarry going at the same time is impossible. And I also am a dad of two, loving wife, and a full-time job. So all of those things, falconry really shoehorns itself into my life. And I've said it many times. I've managed to make it work these 13 years. I've hunted every season. I've caught game every season. Am I the most prolific falconer? No, I'm not. But I've always made it work.
Yeah.
So
And now you're flying a Harris hawk, a old intermewed bird. Uh,
yeah,
that's a female. How old is she?
Maiden is 12, and she's been my ride or die for all 12 years. We've caught tons of jackrabbits together, cottontail, um, and she's had her share of pretty. She broke her leg a couple of years ago, and it took us a couple seasons for her to get back into like, okay, I want to start crushing game. Really, this season is her kind of her renaissance um, uh, year, where I haven't seen her hesitate yet
Yeah.
to catch a jackrabbit. So
And you mostly hunt jacks with her.
yeah,
Yeah.
jacks and cottontails, and mice if she decides to.
Yeah. You're not going to stop them from doing that anyway.
They
Um,
love mice. They love mice.
is she a captive bred bird or a passage bird?
She's a captive bred bird from Mike Serene.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think it was actually her second clutch. She's a pretty big girl. She flies at like 940. Um, which is a good size for a Harris hawk, So, um,
And your other bird is a rehab golden.
yes. So this year, um, I became a crazy person and decided to fly my first golden eagle, which a lot of people say, you need to fly like a ferruginous hawk or a um, female goshawk to kind of get yourself prepared for a golden. I happen to have a 52-year-old Griffin vulture in my care for the last years of his life. And that's how I kind of got my large bird experience.
Uh-huh.
He couldn't fly, he could barely see, but he would hang out in my backyard and I'd have to grab him all the time to put him back in. And there's pictures of him sitting on the barbecue while my kids are playing in the water table underneath him. Like just he was part of the landscape of my backyard for
Yeah.
5 years. He passed away last September, and yeah, I've always known about eagle falconry. I think there's some people in the sport that have brought it to the forefront, and it is not easy to fly a golden eagle in the Bay Area. Some would say it's impossible. Um, I put her in every situation I can at any time I can, um, whenever I can. And so people ask me, how are you doing? I go, I just fly her all the time, regardless of if I have game or not, just as a rehab, not a falconry bird. So the goal is to get her in shape, get her flying, get her chasing game as often as I can. And she's seen, you know, 30 or so legitimate slips this year. And it might take another 30 or 70 to get her actually catching the game. But, um, your slip management diagram, or I don't know, what are you calling it these days,
Well,
Matthew?
it's a good question. So these are concept cards.
Yeah.
Is kind of my catch-all term for them. And the purpose is to make some sort of manual visual representation of these ideas that I find are important in my own falconry about sort of breaking down, whether it's weight management or slip management, or I've got a couple others that are lined up that sort of all in the fundamentals, for falconry fundamentals, wheelhouse of ideas. And this one, not to stop you from where you were going, but it's sort of germane because it's to my questions for you about your two birds that you have and where you're flying them, and a comment that you had made to me on a direct message about the CHEC meet, which
Yeah.
we I think we met at the last one,
Yeah.
and that was a small bird meet, set in probably the perfect place for hawking, Jack Merlins on small birds.
Yeah.
And this year's meet was an eagle centered meet, so the opposite. And you had mentioned that the cover was very different, the slips were very different. Briefly, the idea behind breaking down slip management in some fundamental way is that these opportunities that we have to fly any sort of raptor at any kind of game are really a matter of figuring out how to give some advantage to the bird.
Yes.
And those advantages are there are many of them. They're not just five, but and we can argue about how many there might be, but the fact is that there are several, and not only can you think about them and talk about them, but that you can combine them in certain ways to add advantage to your bird. And that ultimately, if you want your bird to end up on some game, you've got to tweak all the advantages essentially. Initially, so you're in this phase now where you're trying to enter the golden. I mean, if she's chasing game, I think she's entered. It is by my definition. I mean, she knows she's hunting with you. She's flying off the fist, presumably,
Yes.
and chasing
Yes.
jackrabbits and missing. But it's not like she doesn't know that that's what she's supposed to be doing. So
That's correct.
yeah. So it's a matter of how do we get the feet on the rabbit, And then when you think about you think about that, what are the attributes of a slip that might make that more or less likely? How close the slip is, the speed differential between the raptor and the quarry, how the cover is structured, how high the hawk or falcon is, whether there's any element of surprise involved. These are kind of your basic sort of operating principles, and you can leverage one, leverage two, leverage several of them together, and that's basically what we always do. And if any hawk ever catches anything, it's because they successfully navigated or leverage these advantages. So the slip management tool is really just a way to start that conversation with somebody, and help them see that it's not just one advantage or another advantage, but several, and working in combination, and that depending on the slip, and depending on the hawk and the quarry and the cover, those sort of relative advantages kind of shift around, which so it gives you an opportunity then now to have a discussion about what is the difference between one slip or another. So when you wrote to me, you said, basically this situation is totally different this year. And what did you mean by that?
Well, let me walk through. I kind of put some pictures together for you.
Yeah, please.
Let me walk through like a day in the life of Lamcke Falconry. So this is where I live. Actually right above where I live in Morgan Hill. Morgan Hill was a person named Morgan Hill, but there's a lot of hills in Morgan Hill, coincidentally. We're kind of a narrow valley. It's like when I started falconry here, there was a lot less houses. And similar to you, I feel your pain when you're at a field that you've hunted for years and now it's houses or a tilt up or something.
Yeah.
This is a landowner we had permission on, which is about 5 minutes from my front door, up all the way up this hill, and he's on like 200 acres plus. So I can soar the eagle here, and there's jackrabbits here.
Okay.
But there is no legitimate slips for the eagle. They're all in rocks, or it's all hills. So if you're trying to hunt with an eagle off of your fist, it's not going to work. It's not really going to work here.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. Like why, if there are jacks there, maybe you're gonna get to that point, but tell me like what would make it better?
What would make it better is if it was flat ground, open ground, or we were soar hawking, which was not the goal at this phase in this bird's life. Now it is. Now it's getting her soaring so we can get her to release. But for now, it was getting her in shape and teaching her what quarry is. It's a unique situation with an eagle, whereas in Harris hawk, you've shown them a couple jackrabbits, they get the game, they figured it out. This eagle, she was so young, literally teaching her how to chase stuff. Like she knows how to fly, kind of. It was getting her to trigger that response in her brain to chase stuff. So in this situation, it was a terrible idea to try to soar or try to hawk off the fist, but it was a cool picture. And she does fly in these situations, just not a lot.
Yeah. Go ahead, keep going with your presentation.
Yeah. So then where we hunt with a Harris hawk can be much more varied. Number one, because maiden hawks off the fist, out of a tree, off of a T-pole. She can crash brush. She can hunt with her buddy. So much more varied of a situation. So this is a field. This is my son here. This is a field that we found this year, which has every type of situation that you talk about, Matthew. It's got this type of ground, which is more open and less cover, but enough for a jackrabbit. It's got an orchard over here, which sometimes the rabbits run into and the birds can hunt off the trees. it has a vineyard where we flush most of the rabbits out of, but is too thick for them to crash into. Like the birds are not going to crash into them. But also, when you think about it, Matthew, the difference in season, how far we into the season or not, it affects the bird's ability to see the rabbits. So when we started hawking this vineyard, there are leaves all over those vines. Now so you get very short slips.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't get it before it goes into the next row, they're not going to get it. Now, these girls will chase over half the vineyard because they can see the rabbit the whole way, and they'll wait till it gets into an opening and then drop.
So the slip has fundamentally changed.
Yes.
And not because the quarry has changed and the hawk has changed, but the nature of the cover has changed.
Correct.
Right.
So those are things you could have in your brain when you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what permission do I need to get where I need to fly this bird? That's just a good shot. That's Sedona. That's Maiden's buddy. They've been hunting together for like 10 years.
That bird belongs to who?
That's my friend Jason Shorley's bird. This is another vineyard, but this has great cover for hawking as far as I'm concerned. It's got a little bit of cover. It's a little bit open. It's big country for the most part. It's in a vine in like Livermore. So they caught a bunny right here. I think that was a bunny there.
And how close of a slip was that?
Like close. The bunny slips are closer, right? Because they're going to go into a hole.
Right. But you also you flush them closer too, you know. So you were hawking this off a T-perch.
Yes. And on the T-perch thing, I texted you about T-perch years ago. Like, how do you get them to do that? And I put it off forever until we started getting into these fields with heavier cover and shorter slips.
Right.
That was this year. And I went, what am I waiting for? I was afraid it was going to take them all year to figure out what a T-perch does. It took them like 2 days.
Yeah.
2 hunts. Now they love the T-perch. Now it took them a little while to get used to walking with us with the T-perch, but now they love it. They absolutely love it. And it only took like one catch off the T-perch and they're married to it. They'll go to either Falconer, both of them, and they'll land on them together for the most part. And without tidbits, we can hawk all day. And anyway.
So in terms of advantage, so compared to flying two people, one person each with a hawk on the fist, walking through cover, which looks like maybe, you know, thigh high, shin high to thigh high, maybe.
Waist high. It's
or waist high if it gets early in the season, maybe. Like, how would you characterize the advantage that what changes with the T-perch?
What changes is they stay with you. Our birds are not wed to our gloves.
Okay, so
like
they're
Herrick socks are, and I did that on purpose because as an apprentice I had a red tail that would just not leave. So they're not wed to us. So number one, it keeps them with us because we're the flushers. We don't have dogs yet, at least dogs that hunt with us. 2, it gives them a speed advantage off the T-perch, a little bit of a drop, especially if we're hunting, if we're in a field with cottontail. And 3, it's just they can see way more of the field up there. I think the biggest advantage to the T-perch is that they are always in position if they're on the T-perch, technically. Technically, they're always in position.
So in position in this sense, it's proximity to the flush. Like if you're causing the flush, they're going to see it because they're right there. And their start then starts immediately. They're not playing catch up, which is not a game changer for a hawk, but it does change how the slip goes.
What it has done is it's made them more excited to stick with us, even if there are higher perches. So if we're hunting near trees, I don't care if they're up in the trees. They're following us. They're following the T-perch nowadays. It's kind of, it's funny. Anyway,
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
yeah. So then these are the fields we mostly hunt in, probably in the Bay. This is probably what it looks like. This is what
Okay.
we're gonna do. In the hills, probably on a vineyard or probably on some track home that's not been built yet. This is exactly what it looks like.
Yeah. That doesn't look too bad. That's
It's good,
yeah,
and the fields are like becoming few and far between.
sure.
We've been lucky. Where we live is pretty central. We can figure it out. So then we went to Bishop. Bishop is in not really Southern California. It's like east
Hmm.
south of me. As the crow flies, it's only 150 miles, but we have to go around the Rockies because we took a big
Yeah.
RV there
Yeah.
and took like 8 hours, 8 hour drive. So if it was a 3 hour drive, we'd be there every other weekend.
Right.
This
Um,
is it. It's like hunting in the Lord of the Rings movie.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's beautiful.
it's insane, and we we found not a lot of game. The whole meat was kind of low on game this year. We think because there's a drought. There's
Hmm.
still a drought in California. Even though we've had some good rain the last couple of years, it's still dry. And this is the inland desert up uh, probably 80 miles from Death Valley. So we're like 4,000, 5,000 feet. Um, it's funny, the lowest spot and the highest spot in the lower 48 are within 80 miles of each other. And they're both in California. It's pretty crazy. You pass by both of them as you drive to Bishop. So you get here, and this is what you got. Um, the girls took a cottontail out here off of one of these trees, I think. And Sedona just, she has this. I've seen other harris hawks do it too. She just starts flying, and you're like, what is she doing? I don't know. And about 100 yards later, she just drops, and Maiden came in and helped her out. It was a good catch, and then Maiden got a cottontail on her own a couple days later.
So this cover is denser.
It's
Uh,
very thick.
yeah.
It's very thick. It's not impossible where like she could see the rabbit. These little pockets here. There's little pockets where you'll be able to see the bunnies run or the rabbit run.
Right. Right.
But for
And
an eagle, that's not ideal.
right. So let me conjecture here. So a Harris will use this cover differently than the eagle does, or approaches it differently. So a Harris is going to fly high and stay over the quarry until an opening shows up, and then wing over on it, or just
Pretty
keep
much.
following it indefinitely until there's some advantage.
That's the way Sedona got this one. Maiden
Yeah.
got a couple days later just sitting on a bush. Um, I think she knew there was something there. So he came off the T perch, sat on this bush, and just went boom, like just
Yeah.
right down to it.
So sort of maybe an ambush, maybe caught it on the
Maybe,
ground. Yeah.
maybe.
And I've had Harris hawks that they would spear a bird. I mean, spear a rabbit sitting, uh,
Yeah,
and I mean, it never moved. It was clearly it's clearly an ambush.
yeah.
Um, so that might be in that case,
So it's
them
both
using
both in
a little
both
surprise.
ways. In both ways, yeah. They're using their brains.
Hmm.
Really, it's a classic Harris Hawk catch. Both of them really using their
Right.
brains to figure this out to catch it. This is not like a perfect slip from 20 yards away where it's running away from you with like almost no cover. These are birds that think more about like how they're going to catch stuff, and they can do it in various different ways.
So you were about to contrast that to the eagle. So what does the eagle? How does the eagle think about this?
So the eagle needs cover like this, which is
Okay.
much more open and shallow.
So not,
And
not as high and less of it.
yeah, and so she's hunting off my fist, or really that's how we were doing this, off my fist. And she's got, especially a female eagle has one chance. That's it. There's not a lot of remounting, especially with a baby who doesn't know any better. She'll remount on her lure. And I've seen her remount on a jack, but it's not like watching a Harris hawk or even a male golden eagle remount on
Yeah.
a,
And by
on a
that you mean
quarry.
just pick up and start chasing again, take
Correct.
another stab at it. Yeah.
Correct. So when she tries to take another stab at it, it's not going to happen. It's the B-2 bomber taking off.
Yeah.
It takes forever. It's not a
Right.
fighter jet. So, and she's in the middle of a multiple course at the end of the year. So
Yeah. So although eagles are fast, they're not fast in this situation.
no,
Yeah.
so
So
they need
there
one.
is a
They get one chance,
yeah.
and she'll easily get up to 40 miles an hour straight flight,
Yeah.
no problem. Today, just now, she did 30 miles an hour on the truck without any. That was like off of my fist. So that's cooking for a bird that big.
Yeah.
Um, and we bagged her on a cottontail, and she caught it no problem, just running straight.
Mm-hmm.
So this is her on kill, looking pretty awesome. So um, yeah.
But
So this
but similar slips on a wild cottontail. I mean, where they're not going to present themselves in that way.
no,
Yeah.
we bagged her on a cottontail that was more like a jack slip.
Yeah. Right.
So
Right.
um, and
Okay. So is
really,
this more of the same
this
good
is it.
eagle cover? Yeah.
So what we would do, I think this is one Harris hawk, two Harris hawks. You can find them in there.
Yeah.
We're trying to flush game down into this valley, and um, we found one jackrabbit. That was it, flushed down into there, and that was a great, perfect example of a chase that they missed. Um, I don't really know why. They just missed it. It was a perfect slip, but you know,
They'll catch
this
them.
is this is the kind of country when Lauren talks about Mongolia hunting on these ridges, you're
Mm-hmm.
overlooking the valley, you have people flushing down below. This is the kind of stuff that you want to see um, when you're hawking with an eagle. I think this gives them eagles the best advantage. It's perfect cover. They're going to be flying so fast by the time they get down to where the jackrabbit is. And if you have a sight hound keeping that rabbit moving, it's it's going to be easier for them to
Right.
catch up.
Right.
Um,
You have some height advantage. Um,
yes,
Proximity, not these are not close slips necessarily,
yeah,
but don't need to be because you got open ground. And
yeah,
if it's a jackrabbit, it's going to run straight, at least in the by and large. Um, and if your cover is built the right way, it can't find enough refuge quick enough to
no,
escape an eagle that's flying fast, twice as fast as it's running.
yeah. So this what Bishop did for me and my eagle falconry at least was give me an opportunity to see exactly what she could do
Mm-hmm.
in these situations, even if it was fake. This is just us. It finally got some wind, and with wind with eagles, it's actually a good thing because they use it. I'm trying to get her to fly to me. Here when she does. There she goes. So normally we'd want to flush a jackrabbit down here, but we just didn't see any. So
Mm-hmm.
she's playing around.
Did you have people flushing with you or no?
Yeah, yeah. It was
They
such
just
a perfect situation. This is like a little canyon
yeah.
right here, and
Yeah.
the other side. I mean, it would have been perfect. That's why I left her here. I was
Yeah.
sure we'd flush something down there, but yeah. What you get with that? Try to find a video. doing that. Here. So this is, now come on. This is us just like trying to get her on a, um, there you go. So this is a simulation of what that looks like from down below. So I hiked up this hill, same hill I took a picture of before, and my friend Jason's driving the lure truck down here.
Okay. So you just to explain, you've got it's a remote control.
Yeah, remote control
Car?
truck,
Yeah.
a Traxxas, which is like a 40-mile-per-hour truck.
Yeah.
And you'll see she tucks in right at the end here to kind of go for it. Right at the end, see her just tuck right in. And he was holding back, but she easily made it up to 40 miles an hour plus.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of country you want. These are the kind of slips you want with an eagle.
Right.
And so when people talk to me about, well, I don't have a place to fly an eagle, how do you do it? I go, I have to just say, like, I fly her wherever I can. Unless I'm going to move to Bishop, California,
Right.
Which is not really an option for me.
Right.
That's really it.
But in your mind, clearly there is an ideal slip.
Yes.
On a jack and an ideal place in which to do that. Can I share my screen?
Yes, sir.
Share screen. All right. Can you see this?
Yep.
All right. So this is sort of a digital version of the slip management card.
Yep.
And Tim Williams, who developed the Falconer Journal app, put this together for me. And the price was right. He did it over a weekend for free.
The Falconry Journal app this year changed my game.
Yeah.
It changed my falconry. You talked about it last year. I was like, I don't know. And it really did. You know what? It makes you accountable almost, because if you don't enter your weight in every time, it'll tell you, oh, not enough data. You're like, I got to keep up with that.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. Yeah. No. It encourages good habits, and I think it rewards good habits by giving you good data.
Yes.
And that's something that it's always been important to me. I've always had an eye toward what can you do with a big data set once you have it, and of course it's garbage in or garbage out. It's like at the end of the season you can't do anything with it if it's got big gaps in it. And so taking daily notes and trying to make sure that I would know or be able to intuit it by the end of the season what I wanted to know. Then I had to take those notes to begin with, or and this basically prompts you for everything. So the Falconer Journal app, and now it does some sort of grams per hour lost calculations on its own based on your data. So it really is starting to add a lot of value. So yeah, I'm a big fan also.
Yeah, I will say I've been able to take that data and give it to the rehabber, who then gives it to Fish and Wildlife, and it proves, number one, how much money and food it costs to feed an eagle, and really what it is showing Fish and Wildlife is how much they burn every time we fly them.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't think anybody with an eagle had used the app before, so it's pretty amazing that platform can work for your kestrel all the way up to 15-pound eagle. So,
yeah, that's good. That's good to know. It definitely, it's definitely accurate enough with the kestrel, and to see that it works on the other end of the scale is good too. Okay, so let's experiment here. this is like say a digital version of the card, or the set of cards that work together to sort of spell these things out for slip management. Let's talk about that. The ideal eagle slip. So
Okay.
you're on the ridge and you got a jack that flushes underneath you somewhere, and you think about the cover and how it needs to be structured. You've got some advantages here that are obvious: the height, the speed, the proximity of the slip, element of surprise, cover. If you
Well,
had to, if yeah, it's all of them, perhaps, but not in equal measure.
not really. So
No, so
proximity is not with us, right?
yeah,
The
right.
slip is
Let's start.
maybe
Let's start with what do you think of these five? What's the most important? If you're explaining it to somebody asks you, as they have, where's the best place to fly this bird?
height
Where?
and height and speed.
Okay, so height. Is it? Would you say it's if you
Well,
had
it's relative to speed.
yes, right. So let's say it's 50% of the slip, like
Yeah.
of chance of success. Um, is really owes itself about half, to height. Let's say maybe it doesn't, but to your point, like the more speed you have, the less height you need, um, and this sort of illustrates that. But
Yeah.
you're going to say that height and speed are maybe the two most important factors,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially what so in my view, so proximity is not really relevant here. These are long slips.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily flushing them at your feet.
Yeah. I'd put that down to like
Yeah.
5%.
Um,
And then surprise is
it's
pretty
no
high.
it's a pursuit in my view, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So there's not much surprise involved. Um, but the cover is very important. Um, the structure of cover is what allows the speed to work, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so if we don't know anything else, we do know that you don't have to be close, and you don't have to you know catch them by surprise, but you do need the structure of cover has to be somehow involved here. Um, and maybe if the cover is is perfect, you don't you don't need um, let's see you don't need as much speed. So just in terms of trying to figure out how would you characterize um, the components of a perfect slip where you saw it, what would it look like?
I think that's about it. I think that would be it right there.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a pursuit slip
Right. It's a pursuit slip.
on jackrabbits or fox, I guess.
Yeah. So
Really have
major
those here.
component of height, cover's got to be perfect. And basically you're encouraging through the height and the cover the allowance of the speed of the bird.
Yeah.
You're making that a possibility. So all right. So let's save this, and I'll put it together in a photo afterwards. Jack slip with eagle. Perfect. Okay, so now let's think about oh, there we go. Let's think about the Harris Hawks. And in the earlier spot where it was a little bit you caught one in a long flight and one you kind of ambushed.
Yep.
So in that long flight, what do you think of these variables? What is the most important advantage?
So that one was all height, not a lot of speed,
Mm-hmm.
and surprise.
So element of surprise.
Yes. So
Yeah.
surprise was huge because that bunny was just running from us. We slipped it, or
Yeah.
we
You flushed it.
you flushed it,
Yeah.
but it was probably like, oh, I got this. I'm out of danger.
And if you
May have
flushed it,
stopped. It may
yeah.
have stopped, and she caught it. That's probably actually what happened because she came
Yeah.
pretty much straight down on it. Sedona has a habit of winging over super hard and overcommitting.
Yeah.
You seem to
Yeah.
do that a few times.
Yeah.
Um,
You mentioned a broken leg. Is that, was that a,
no,
yeah.
that's Maiden broke her leg, and unfortunately,
Oh,
but yeah. But
okay.
Sedona she'll just crash stuff. So it's like um, it was probably height, proximity, and surprise. And
Yeah. These are not, yeah.
cover. I think cover in this situation was a um, habitat
Yeah.
situation. But this is where this is the type of cover where you're going to find cottontail.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not inconsiderable, but it's not, I mean, it just happens to be that that's where the rabbits were.
Yes.
But in terms of like impeding the slip or helping the slip, it was not as much of a factor.
Right.
Okay. So maybe and these are not fast flights necessarily, not as fast as a Harris can go. I mean, they're basically
No.
they're picking their shots, and so you want a close flush, you want to be above it. Surprise is a key element.
Mm-hmm.
Does that look like how you would assess it?
Mm, yeah, it's about right. Proximity is important too. You forget about that one.
Yeah. I mean, with the if you flushed it, and the fact that you flushed it was important in my view. This is my view. That means that proximity is a key element to the.
Yeah, they caught it out of a tree, but I was right under the tree when I
Yeah.
flushed it. So
Okay. So relative to where it flushed and
yeah,
where they were. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, okay. And if you were to, so let's save this one.
So cool.
And call it Harris Hawk thick cover from tree. And a more open flight. Like wasn't there one that they caught that basically she just kept flying?
That was the one we just did. So
Okay.
I'd say let's do one that's just a typical jackrabbit Harris Hawk flush.
Yeah. Like
Is
what would that look like?
which is probably not a lot of height because they're hunting
Mhm.
from a T perch or your
Right.
fist. So that's all speed,
Yeah.
proximity, and surprise, not almost no cover.
Yeah. So
So
maybe
proximity is important with jackrabbit flushes because you know you you want to initiate the chase in their brain. And if they're far out, some birds will start chasing it, but the older Harris hawks get, the more savvy they get to those long
yeah.
tail chases. So if you have a jackrabbit flush right at your feet, they're going to chase it for longer than they're going to chase one that you flushed, 50 yards out.
Right.
So proximity, that's why I think that metric on this is as important as surprise.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it
So
puts proximity a little bit further ahead.
okay.
It is surprise, yeah. Maybe like 35.
Okay. uh, yeah. So so the idea behind this is not that this is a calculator or that we're recording
Yeah,
some necessary recipe. It's about giving two people an opportunity to like really think about what was the most important thing and how was it relative to the second most important thing. And if if I'm going to go fly my Harris Hawk where you live, um, this gives us an opportunity to think in advance about about what I'm going to find when I get there and what and how that might differ from how it works here.
Matthew, I'm not the only falconer. I can't be the only falconer that has this chart in their brain when they're hunting.
Well,
I
it's you and me, so it's at least two of us, right?
It's in my head now, and I can't get it out. And weight control too.
Yeah,
Um, although the eagle has thrown it off completely. Um, We
Yeah,
flew
that's
for only a
interesting.
half an hour today, and she burned a whole. I guarantee she ate a whole quail. When I get home, she'll be at weight. So
That's incredible. Yeah.
it's crazy.
Jack Harrison, typical.
But I definitely have the slip management. Um, it's just in my head, especially when we're trying to find new fields. You're looking outside the truck. Does that look good? And where we were in Bishop, it's all BLM, so we had free reign. It was just a big playground, and you find yourself, if we found that field in town, we would be all over it, but we're out there nitpicking cover because we had a lot to choose from.
Right, right.
We ended up finding a lot of them, a lot of rabbits among rocks. There's a lot of petroglyph formations or places where they've done petroglyphs on rocks
Huh.
all over the place in Bishop.
Yeah,
And that's where we'd find rabbits. It was kind of cool.
it's
The
interesting.
Harris hawk on a rock with petroglyphs, flushing
Yeah,
rabbits
yeah.
underneath it.
Great photo op. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was all good.
All right. Well, look, let me ask you one more question. As you look forward in 5 years or 10 years, what's going to change for you? How do you see your local falconry changing?
Uh, it's not going to be great. I'm not looking forward to it. Uh, it's going to have to be more traveling. I did more. Thankfully, I have my best friend became a falconer about 5 years ago, and him and I have gone on trips together this year. It's been a real opportunity for me to like teach him the sport, and also find new places to go. We have the two of us calling everybody, meeting meeting landowners and meeting farmers and stuff. But that's been helpful. In the next 5 to 10 years, my kids are going to be older. We're going to be getting into sports. Um, I don't think that I I don't think that I'll have an eagle for a little while. We'll see. Certainly not a falconry eagle until my kids are out of the house and I can travel. But that's going to be it. It's going to be traveling, I think, to find those really great fields, um, and I think that's how it's going to be. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
maybe micro hawking in my future for sure. I think that's probably realistically, if I didn't have my Harris hawk, that's what I'd be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Early.
just the next most common quarry, whatever that is,
Yeah,
and access to it. Um,
yeah.
yeah, prey
It'd
based.
probably. I've always wanted to fly a Merlin. That's probably going to happen in the
Yeah,
next 10 years.
yeah.
So
All
I'll
right.
be calling you when that happens.
Well, don't be calling me. I'll be forwarding your call to an expert. I got
Good,
a couple on speed dial. Um,
cool.
all right. Well, hey, look, thank you so much, Leslie. I really appreciate your time and your
Yeah,
thoughts, and your enthusiasm for this idea. You're an early adopter and a super fan, and I appreciate that very much.
yeah. Are you gonna make this into a video
Yeah,
thing?
if it actually
It
recorded,
works.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah, and it'll be like I'd like to do a series of these and get people to do kind of what we did today. It was like what where do you hawk? Show me some pictures of that. Let's talk about what the slips look like um
Okay.
and then try to figure out how they might differ from each other. Um, and then in that way it kind of helps us have a template for how to talk about this topic.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Good night.